This video will be covering the structure of a single muscle cell. So the term muscle cell is the same as the term myofiber, muscle fiber, and myocyte. So all four of those terms are interchangeable to describe a single muscle cell. So just as all cells have plasma membranes, the muscle cell has a plasma membrane, and it's termed the sarcolemma. So this pink layer here that's surrounding the entire cell, that is termed the sarcolemma. Now you also have a connective tissue layer that surrounds each muscle cell. And so that layer is called your endomysium. So that's here, and that's going to surround an individual muscle cell. So you have your endomysium. Just beneath it, you can see here is the sarcolemma. So some other structures that you need to know will be your triad. So the triad includes the T-tubules, which are shown here in blue. And the T-tubules, meaning they are called transverse tubules. They literally transverse each of the myofibrils across the entire cell. So the T-tubules are responsible for carrying the nervous impulse signal from the sarcolemma all the way through the entire cell to each of the myofibrils. So the T-tubules, they will run perpendicular to the myofibrils. So the myofibril runs this way, the T-tubules run this way. And so the T-tubules, along with the two terminal cisternae on either side, make up the triad. So the terminal cisternae of the sarcoplasmic reticulum sandwich the T-tubule, creating the triad. So all of this spongy looking material in the flesh color, that's your sarcoplasmic reticulum, and those come to ends along the T-tubules. Those are called terminal cisternae. So the sarcoplasmic reticulum comes to an end here along the T-tubules, called the terminal cisternae on either side. So another structure we will see is going to be the nerve. So here's the nerve, and the nerve axon. So the motor neuron axon is shown here in yellow, right there in the center. Surrounding it, you have a myelin sheath that's going to act as an insulator to make sure that the electric signal traveling down the length of the axon does not dissipate down the length of the axon. So it means it won't be released out into external environment. So you get a strong signal being sent to the muscle fibers, and every single muscle fiber, so this is a single muscle fiber, has its own neuromuscular junction. So the neuromuscular junction is seen here. The yellow represents the axon, and then here is the axon terminal. So where the axon is going to meet with the sarcolemma, so that's the sarcolemma, is the squiggly lines just right here. That is known as the neuromuscular junction. So at the neuromuscular junction, you have these little white vesicles in the axon terminal, and those vesicles hold the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Acetylcholine will be released from the axon terminal into the synaptic cleft, which is just the space between the axon terminal and the sarcolemma. There's a small space, and that is where acetylcholine will be released into. It will then bind to a receptor on the sarcolemma, and it will result in membrane depolarization. This depolarization runs down the T-tubules and causes the calcium stored in the sarcoplasmic reticulum to be released into the cytoplasm or sarcoplasm. That calcium is what's going to induce a muscle contraction. And it does so by allowing actin and myosin to bind with one another. So actin and myosin, they are proteins that come together and polymerize into myofilaments. So myofilaments then come together to make up myofibrils. And so the myofilaments, they organize into structures called sarcomeres. So here, this is a single sarcomere shaded in green here. And so if you look, this would be one sarcomere's Z disc, and then the next would be here. So going over the structures of the sarcomere, I just want you to know the I band and the A band. The I band is the light colored band, so Li band, the light band. And this is made of thin myofilament. So, which the thin myofilament is made of actin. So this here is your I band. So from here to here, the light part, it's made of thin myofilament, which is made up of actin. Down the center of the I band, you see the Z disc. So that's going to be the peripheral border of a single sarcomere. So from Z disc to Z disc, you have one sarcomere. Then you have this darker region up here. That's called your A band. And your A band is made up of thick filament made of myosin. So myosin polymerizes into thick filaments, thick myofilaments, and that's going to be represented by your A band. Another structure you'll need to know is this purple egg-shaped structure. This is one of the nuclei. And remember, skeletal muscle is multinucleated. So here's another nuclei over here. So there's going to be more than one nuclei for a single muscle cell. So this concludes all of the information you will need to know for this particular model. Now we'll look at another model of a muscle fiber. And so it's showing the same things, it's just a little bit of a different representation. So if you look very close here, I have zoomed in on the myofibrils. So remember we said that actin makes up thin filaments, myosin makes up thick filaments, and they will organize into a sarcomere. So from here, the black line here, to the black line here, is a single sarcomere. And so these are representing your Z discs. So this black line here and this one here represent Z discs. And so from Z disc to Z disc, you have a single sarcomere. Now, a whole bunch of these sarcomeres will come together and line up along with each other to create a single myofibril. Then there are many, many myofibrils in a single muscle cell. So you can see that there's lots of myofibrils in a single muscle cell. So on this model, you can also see the connective tissue layer that's around a muscle cell, known as the endomysium, and that's going to lie right over the sarcolemma. So that's just the plasma membrane of the muscle cell. You can also see here the axon of the nerve, so that's going to be in the middle. And then the myelin sheath is surrounding in a circular fashion. And so if we follow that nerve up, we should be finding a axon terminal, which is right here. So if we zoom in, you should be able to see the neuromuscular junction. So we have the axon terminal here. You can see vesicles are inside, and those will contain acetylcholine. The squiggly white line is representing your sarcolemma, which is the plasma membrane of the muscle cell, and then there's going to be a little space in between them represented in pink here. So that space is called your synaptic cleft. And then once again, we're going to see more than one nuclei. So we see a nuclei here. If we look at the top of this, we see another nuclei. So remember, skeletal muscle is multinucleated. So that concludes our video on the muscle cell.